20 was his name. At least that's what the robots had always called him. 20, you have now been alive for 17 years, one of the robots had recently told him. 20 slid and kicked his way over loose rocks and dirt. His current pair of coveralls had been stitched and patched all over, and the knees were now dirty from the climb. He clutched at tree branches and protruding rocks to pull himself up the last part of the steep path. Under one arm, he held a banged-up metal telescope. 20 climbed up onto a bed of rock that spread out across a narrow plateau like the back of an elephant. The sun was gone, and a pasty green moon now resided over the hills and the wall of mountains further beyond. The young man dusted off the telescope and held it up to his right eye. Panning from right to left, he searched the horizon for any semblance of one of the great cities he had seen in his lessons. 20 knew he had never seen anything before, but perhaps, he hoped, he had missed something. All he could see now were the blurred, split images of shadows and hills and silhouettes of monstrous rock formations. 20 brought the telescope down from his eye. Wiping the cracked lens with the cuff of his sleeve, the young man noticed his warped, green-tinted reflection in a smooth part of the metal casing. He had seen similar reflections in the glossy shells of the robots, but the only other faces he had ever seen like his were in the videos displayed by his learning terminal. 20 raised the telescope to his eye for another look around. He scanned slowly from left to right this time. Still, he only saw hills and silhouettes. The young man scanned a bit more. A blurry light moved into view. 20 paused, locked into his position. It's not a city. What is it? He thought aloud, getting excited. Silently, 20 cursed his telescope's cracked lens. The light moved, and he followed with his telescope. As he turned, the light jumped ahead. The frustrated young man tried to follow, but the light moved even faster. 20 pulled his head away from the eyepiece. He swung the telescope around so that he faced the larger end. Ugh, 20 said. There on the right side of the lens sat one of the luminescent insects that occasionally buzzed around the area at night. 20 slumped down onto the ground, tossing the deceptive telescope aside. He pressed the palms of his calloused hands, covered with scars and tiny burn marks, against the cool, flat rock. If I am the only human here, why is it so? 20 said aloud. He liked the sound of his voice. How was I put here? 20 moved his hands over the solid rock beneath him. I know that the others are real. But where are they? Why are they not here? He picked up his telescope and climbed back down the steeper part of the path. Once on more level ground, he walked faster. He swiped aside ferns and thistles that hung out over the path. I'm 17 years by the house clock, 14 years by the seasons. He kicked a loose rock and kept walking. I was born. But where is there a mother? Where is there a father? The ground passed under his feet unnoticed. The path widened, and 20 came to a boulder. He crouched behind it and he stuck his head out just past its edge. In a clearing about 10 yards in front of him, several robots rolled around on treads. One of them carried a metal bowl of soil into a small greenhouse. Another robot circled around a metal dome next to and twice as big as the greenhouse. A third robot wandered through the whole area. These machines have helped me to live, but they don't know why, said 20 from behind the boulder. They don't ask questions. A small cloud passed in front of the moon, blocking its green light. 20 moved from behind the boulder. He walked forward in the darkness, holding his telescope out in front. The cloud passed, and the moon's green light returned. 20 now stood between the metal dome and the greenhouse. The robots were still milling around. They know I need sustenance and shelter, 20 said, but they don't know I'm here. He waved the telescope above his head. I'm here. One of the robots rolled toward 20. He followed it with his eyes as it rolled by in front of him. Why am I here? 20 dared the robot. The machine halted. 20 took a step back. After a few seconds, the robot turned and started toward the dome. 20 followed it around to the other side of the dome where it stopped. There is no door for the house on this side, said 20. The robot extended one of its arms. An intense blue flame ignited at the end of the arm. 20 watched in silence. He squinted at the blue flame while the robot cut a large rectangle in the base of the metal dome. The flame went out and the robot pushed the loose piece forward. It fell against the metal floor beyond with a loud pang, revealing a narrow chamber. 20, half blinded from staring at the torch flame, followed the robot inside. As his vision began to improve, he made out the interior of the chamber. Built into the walls on both sides were rows of metal drawers. There were 10 on each side. Each one was numbered. 20 counted them all until he came to the last one towards the back. It was open. He examined the mesh fabric that made up the inside of the drawer. The material was thick and heavy, like Kevlar. It sagged just a little, hanging from the drawer's metal frame. At the back end of the drawer, a white hose protruded from the fabric. 20 gazed at the dried blood caked around the end of it. He ran his fingers over the mesh fabric's slick surface until he came to the front edge. He glanced down at the front of the drawer, and embossed on its center was the number 20. The robot plugged one of its arms into a socket next to the young man. Humming and clicking sounds started from inside the walls of the chamber. "I've never seen this part of the house," said 20. "Why was it sealed?" 20 leaned his head back against the wall next to the robot, and he let himself down onto the floor. Still clutching his telescope, 20 stared at all the other unopened drawers. A small red light flashed on above the socket that the robot had plugged into. Above the red light were the words, "Artificial womb." 20 looked at the red light. "What is artificial womb?" he asked. The robot remained silent and motionless. 20 looked back at the drawers. This means something. He got up and walked around to the main section of the dome. Inside, he sat down on the cool metal floor in front of the learning terminal. At the lesson search prompt, he typed artificial womb. The usual professor came on the screen, sweater over collar shirt, greyed, mustached and bespectacled. He just stared out at 20. After a moment, he took a deep breath and began to speak. "If you are watching this, then you landed safely and everything is working properly. I know you have been wondering why you are all alone there. Well, we weren't sure if any of this would work, so we needed to make sure. See, we needed a kind of first try to get all the systems running. They must be if you are watching this. In 9 months, you are going to have some company. There will be 19 others, 9 males and 10 females. It is your responsibility to supervise the robots in their efforts to raise these others into adults." 20 looked aside from the screen. The professor was saying something about the amazing responsibility of carrying on the human race. 20 stared at the metal floor. "You see, this year, my year, is 2137, and private launches are quite common," said the professor on the computer screen. 20 felt as though the words were being injected through a needle into his thoughts. Now, almost 100 years ago, in 2049, we saw the development of the first fully functioning artificial womb for humans, the professor continued. 20 still didn't know what artificial womb was, but he understood what it meant. The others were real. They were going to be real people, like he had seen on the computer screen, listening to him and talking to him and understanding him. They were going to be there in 9 months by the house clock. He ran outside and grabbed one of the robots, shaking it. His eyes were wild. He slapped the robot with both hands and then he ran back inside. He watched video after video, pretending he was living with the people on the screen. "Time to eat," he said. "Do you like water? The air is warm today. Do you have a telescope? Use my telescope." Inside the chamber on the other side of the dome, a spark shot out from the open drawer labelled 20. White smoke hovered out from behind the drawer. The smoke began to seep out from the edges of the other 19 drawers that were still closed. Next to the red light that was still glowing beneath the words, "Artificial womb," a yellow light flashed on. A wisp of smoke curled in front of the lights and then snaked upward, revealing the label, Error, next to the yellow light. The numbered drawers began to open, each dripping a red syrup onto the floor. "Do you like fruit? I can teach you the way to the cliff," said 20, still sitting in the other section of the dome and pretending with the people on the computer screen. One by one, the drawers continued to open, red gelatinous goo spilling out from each one onto the metal floor. 19 down to 12, 12 down to 7, 7 down to 3. 2 opened with a sudden stop halfway out. Lights above all the open drawers flashed red and yellow. Then, through the wispy smoke, a green light came on and glowed brightly above the only drawer that did not open. A counter on a small screen above the green light began counting down. Hour, 6,719. Minute, 59. Second, 59. 58. 57.